if you guys saw them snatch me away from my appetizer. It's so nice to be here, and it's so nice to be a part of the work we're doing to try to change the world. And I was thinking as I was sitting back there how the truth is, in terms of underserved people and people of color, historically in this country, for more than 400 years, we were not allowed to even learn how to read. And then when we were finally able to learn how to read, so the schools, to some extent, were not capable of doing the work to get us to that place of catching up. So I am so grateful to Literacy Partners and to you guys and to all the people who are doing the work to try to catch this country up and get those stories into the world and get the people reading and just get us where we need to be. I think it is everyone's right to read and everyone's right to be able to tell their stories. And thanks, Jesse, for that fabulous introduction. I was told I had 4 to 5 minutes. And I'm not going to read fast because I have never been a fast reader. It was so great hearing Tommy speak because I too was a really, really slow reader and I struggled to read. And when I was growing up here in Brooklyn, what they had for students were these things called SRA tests. I don't know if people remember this hell on earth, but they were these boxes of reading sources, and if you were reading at the really pale level, you were a really bad reader, and it got darker as the stories got more complicated, and I was always one of the readers at the very pale level. And I realized many years later that I was reading as a writer. I was reading because I wanted to understand how the author got the story on the page, and that to read slowly means being a really engaged reader. And I tend to write short books. So when people tell me, you know, I loved your book, I read it in a day, I'm like, go back and read it again. It took me 3 years to write it. So as an author, I want to tell the readers in the room, I am all for reading slowly and deliberately. And I'm reading tonight from another Brooklyn. It's so amazing to have both my editors in the house. Tracy Sherrod, who's my editor on this book, my adult book, Another Brooklyn, and Nancy Paulson, who I've worked with for many, 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 many years on many, many, many books for young people. And so I'm proud to be in the room where it happens. I couldn't not say that. This is New York. It is Hamilton country, after all. That was the summer the lights went out in New York City, and people looted the stores on Broadway, then rode through our neighborhood in convertibles, the tops down, holding boxes of shoes and television sets and pawned fur coats over their heads. My brother and I watched them from our window. The streets, my father said again and again, were too dangerous for anyone in their right mind. We lit candles, heated up cans of SpaghettiOs on the stove, the food in our fridge going bad as my father searched the neighborhood stores for bags of ice. If Biafra and Vietnam were more dangerous than my brother and I understood, the blackout felt like the end of the world. We heard the horns and sirens moving through the night, saw the hawkers holding their stolen boxes into the air, shouting out prices. In the morning, our father let us go as far as the front gate, where we watched an old woman carrying an armful of looted dry cleaned clothes up the block, the plastic glistening, her wide grin nearly toothless. We saw 2 boys sharing a pair of new roller skates, one still carrying the box beneath his arm. We saw teenagers running toward Broadway and asked again and again if we could go. It's stealing, my father said. We don't steal. We had heard for years that the shop owners on Broadway were white and lived in fancy houses in places like Brentwood, Rego Park, Laurelton. We knew that financing meant watching neighbors throw broken couches and torn mattresses into the alley between houses long before they were paid off. So as we watched the looters move through the neighborhood selling TVs and radios and shoes and dry cleaning they'd taken from window-smashed stores, my brother and I felt a longing to be a part of the free stuff spilling out along Broadway. Still, my father warned us not to leave the front gate, and meant it. That was the summer every park and every school building gave out free lunch, brown paper bags holding plastic-wrapped bologna sandwiches and sugar-sweetened orange juice in foil-sealed cups. We watched hungry kids line up in the heat, waiting for food, hoping a neighbor was volunteering who would sneak them an extra bag. In the hot, refrigeratorless days, with my father broke from the work lost at Abraham and Strauss, my brother and I stood on a line that wrapped around the park and leaned against the chain-link fence as we slowly moved forward. I looked for Sylvia, Angela, and Gigi, afraid I'd see them, hungry and hot like my brother and I, reaching for the brown bags with ashamed and ashy hands. The last of the white people began fading. We didn't know the German woman's name. She was snow-haired, small and thick, with adult sons who used to come with their children on Sundays. The children, 3 boys, would not play with us. In the summer, they sat on their grandmother's stoop in their collared shirts and blonde crew cuts, watching the brown boys in the street spin wooden tops wrapped with grating string. Their fathers had the same cuts, the same pastel-colored collared shirts. In the late afternoon, when the fathers appeared at the top of the stoop, the boys rose and they all made their way to identical station wagons, parked one behind the other at the sidewalk. As the cars pulled away, the boys stared at us. Sometimes the littlest one waved. The brown boys who had moved to the sidewalk to let the cars pass ran back to the middle of the street and resumed their game. But with the pastel boys gone now, it was hard not to see the brown boys differently, in their cut-off, dirty white t-shirts, ashy-kneed, chipped wooden tops violently spinning. We didn't know the Italian family or the Irish sisters who dressed alike and left their building each morning, pulling identical shopping carts, returning each evening with A&P bags. We didn't know the man who yelled at the boys in the street in a language none of them understood, or the curly, red-headed family with the mother who always looked as though she just had a good cry. But we knew their moving vans. We knew their cars. We knew the people who came to help, checked their cars many times, then glared at the boys in the street. We knew the sticks for stickballs weren't weapons. We knew the spikes at the bottom of wooden spinning tops weren't meant to hurt anything but other spinning tops. We knew the songs the boys sang, Gala, Black Power, Destroy, White Boy, were just songs not meant to chase white people out of our neighborhood. Still, they fled. They left driving their cars. They left in the back seats of the cars of sons and daughters. They put for sale signs on their homes, but left before the buildings sold. They rented to single mothers and junkies, Puerto Ricans and blacks, anyone with a deposit, the first month's rent, and the promise of a job somewhere. They put mattresses and broken leg tables and boxes of old books out on the street. Their cars and vans and trucks parted the brown boys, signaled right at the corner, and left our neighborhood forever. My brother had discovered math, the wonder of numbers, the infinite, doubtless possibility. He sat on his bed most days solving problems no 8-year-old should understand. Squared, he said, is absolute. No one in the world can argue algebra or geometry. No one can say pi is wrong. Come with me, I begged. But my brother looked up from his numbers and said, our mother's gone, August. It's absolute. Thank you.